I'm really glad you reminded me about that idea about perfection, because I realized this week that when I decided that I was going to talk about joy today, that traditionally this week is about love. And so I'm going against tradition and talking about joy. You know, the 4 weeks of Advent, it's supposed to be hope and faith and peace and love and then joy. So I was a little embarrassed when I realized that. But when I talked to a friend of mine who's a minister in Dallas, a Unity minister, she said she confused the first 2 weeks, so I didn't feel quite so bad. So today I'm talking about joy. And so I'm lighting a candle for joy this week. We talked about hope and faith the first week, and last week I talked about peace. And so this week, about joy. And my normal way of preparing for Sunday is to spend some time in meditation and contemplation and doing some journaling, some writing, and some just thinking through. And normally, when I sit down with a topic, I have this awareness of, okay, and I get it, and I'm really enjoying the flow here. And when I sat down this week to think about joy, I was like, I'm not getting it. And that concerned me a little bit, because I didn't feel a connection with joy. This idea of joy, what is that? And so I thought, wow, that's an interesting awareness. I'm not really connected to joy. And so I stopped and I thought, okay, well, what do I normally do when I don't feel connected? I go within. I pray, I meditate, I connect, I try to listen. And so I went in and I said, teach me about joy, this inner knower, this awareness of God within. Teach me about joy. And so what came to me about that in that moment and then in subsequent days was that joy is this, in its absolute, joy is this inimitable, ineffable, just energy. It's this effervescent sort of life energy that just is a part of who we are. And it's a part of that, we sing that song, I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. And that came to me as well, joy like a fountain. It's like this energy that is a part of our soul, our essence. It's really, in a way, who we are. As well as we talked about peace and love and hope. Peace and hope and faith are also a part of who we are. I talked the week about week of Thanksgiving. I talked about this idea of gratitude from the perspective of Brother David Steindl Rast, who is a Benedictine monk and teaches a lot about gratitude. And I talked about it in the way he does, in that gratitude is gratefulness and thanksgiving. It's having the feeling of gratefulness, the awareness of our divinity and the divinity of all. And it's sort of that place of, for me, I relate to it as this place of just awe, inspiring of the awareness of God moving in and through and as all creation, and in and through and as me, and we're all connected in that. And when I'm aware of that, I'm full. I'm filled up. That great fullness of life and God, and then we experience that and express that as thanksgiving. And I thought, how is that related to joy? And I thought joy is that, I think, in its absolute, that bubbling up that just happens, that fountain of joy that just bubbles up when we're in that place of deep connection, great fullness, and the awe of life. The awe of life. It's just a part of who we are in the absolute of who we are. And it's like peace and love in that we talk about God being love, and we are expressions of God, so we're loving. And God is peace, and so we are expressions of God, and we are become peaceful. The same thing I think is true for joy. God is joy. And when we're connected, we become joyful or joy-us. And it's just a part of our nature. I have a friend, another Unity minister, who was really my first Unity minister and became a mentor for me in many ways. And she wrote a book. She's written several books, but one of the books she wrote is called Grace, Awakening Essence. And in that book, she talks about our spiritual DNA. And she uses DNA as an acronym for divine nature attributes. Our spiritual DNA are our divine nature attributes. And she talks about our divine nature attributes as being peace and love and joy. It's an aspect of our being, who we are in our spirit, our spiritual DNA. And so, okay, I get that. I mean, okay. I'm like, okay. That's what came to me in that. And I thought, yeah, okay, but I get it. And if that's the truth, why am I not always feeling it? Why am I not always experiencing joy? I mean, and honestly, it's like, okay, I have a relationship with this idea of peace. I can feel peace. I can get to peace. And I can even be peaceful. Sometimes I can be peaceful in the midst of chaos. I get it. I can touch love. And I know that I can be loving, even when it's difficult sometimes to express love and to share love and to be in love. I get that. But there was something about joy that I just recognized I don't necessarily allow myself to feel joy, to be joyful, or to be joyous. And that disturbed me. And so I wanted to go into a little bit about that, of why. And what can I do about that if I'm not feeling joyous or joyful? If it's a part of my nature, I want to touch that, and I want to feel that, and I want to experience that. And so what came to me, and I went within and I said, well, why am I not feeling joy more often? Or I really in that moment, I'll be honest with you, I couldn't really connect with it. I couldn't connect with when was I feeling joy? When have I felt joy? That effervescent sort of awareness of life. You know, we talk about dancing for joy, and yesterday we had a workshop, sing for joy, you know? Sometimes we can weep for joy, you know? But where have I felt that? And why not? And when I went within and I asked, what came to me was one word: fear. Fear is the opposite of joy. Now, I love how things work together. You know, I love the one mind and how things come to us when we're open to receiving. And so it was Tuesday morning. I get an email every Tuesday morning from Reverend what's her name? Reverend Ellen Davenport, who many of you may know. She's the author of the 5 Principles. She's wrote a book. Her latest book is called Hell in the Hallway, Light at the End of the Tunnel, about transitions and changes in our lives. And she's also a Unity minister in Texas, in Wimberley, Texas. I think she still serves on the board, doesn't she? No, she was on the board of the Unity World Headquarters, or Unity, yeah. So she does a blog, and her blog is now published on Patheos. Is that how you say that? Patheos.com. And her title of her blog this week was, "Why Do Angels Always Say Fear Not?" Why do angels always say fear not in the stories in the Bible? Why was it so important for the writers of those stories to have the angels who are giving this great message, first of all, say, "Fear not." And she says in her blog post that she used to think that the angels would say, "Fear not," because if an angel appeared to you, you know, if this winged creature all of a sudden appears to you, you might feel a little anxious, or, might have a little fear going on, and so the angel would know that, right? And so the angel would say, "Chill out, it's okay, But then she also goes on to say that what she has recognized is that it might be important for the angels in the stories, or for us to be aware that and angels, let me just say this, angels metaphysically represent the thoughts of God, the awarenesses, the messages, if you will, of our higher self, that higher self within us. So I think it was that, again, maybe it was that angel that appeared to me and said, "It's fear. It's fear that is keeping you from really feeling joyful." So it wasn't like I had a vision, but I had an awareness. And so maybe that was the voice of an angel. And so she said the other part of that is that the angels, or those voices of God, probably recognize that many of us, in our humanness, sort of exist in this sort of state of fear. We sort of exist in this state of somewhat of anxiety, whether it's abject fear and terror, or if it's just a low level of discomfort and a little bit of anxiety about life or about ourselves. And I think that what I believe the angels in the story, especially in this Christmas story, are saying, the angels appeared to Mary, the angel appeared to Joseph, and the angel appeared to the shepherds, and to give them this great news, this news of great joy that was going to be to all people. And I think what the angel in the story is telling us, you and me, not just Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and others in the story, but telling us is to let go of our fear, which really is generated, I believe, at the foundation from a sense of separation. We don't get it. We don't yet get it that we are God expressing. We don't yet get it that we're not separate. We don't yet get it that we are the ones to bring forth into this dimension, this earthly plane, peace and love and joy. We don't yet get that. And so the angel is saying, let go of the fear. Know that the Christ, or that light, the true light of you, is being born through you to Mary. That light is within you. And it is your connection with the divine. And as you accept that, as you embrace that, as you allow that to grow in your awareness, then joy happens. It says to the shepherds who are tending their flocks, "Fear not, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people." All people. And so it's our opportunity, really, to let go of fear, to let go, first of all, of our idea that we are separate from the divine. And I know from personal experience that that's not always easy. It's not always easy. But I think it is that fear of the, and I'm going to use the word ego self, the adverse ego, the ego-identified self, that thinks it's separate. And we give that a lot of energy. And so in that, I separate myself from God and from my own joy. The other thing that came up this week, again, it's interesting how things show up. You know, when you're asking, you ask and you shall receive. Be open to what you receive. Be open to the answers, wherever they come from. And you never know where they're going to come from. Sometimes maybe from the most unlikely places those answers come. But Jay is actually out in California, the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, doing some business, and he's been out there for a while. And we were talking about joy on one of our conversations this week. And he said, it's hard for me when I am walking around in San Francisco and I see all these homeless people on the streets, these people who are experiencing homelessness and people who are, many of them mentally ill, who are on the streets and it gets cold at night, and so they're covered up with newspapers and cardboard. And he said, it's hard for me to feel joy when I witness these things that are going on in the world, the pain and the suffering of other people. How can I witness that and connect with joy? How can I claim joy when there's so much suffering in the world? And I thought, yeah, how can we? How can we own joy when there's so much suffering in the world? And then I realized, and what I want to say to us today, and remind myself of today, is that depriving ourselves of joy, no matter what degree we deprive ourselves of joy or of anything, deprivation is not going to give it to somebody else. Depriving ourselves of joy or peace or love is not creating more of it for somebody else, because there is an unending supply. And you see, it's first important for us to claim it for ourselves, to find a way to touch it for ourselves, because we can't give anything that we don't have. We can't share anything that we don't know that we have. And so I'm not suggesting that we ignore the suffering in the world, because we only need to look around in our own city to see the need and the suffering and the pain that people are experiencing, the need, and even the people who are coming to be a part of our community for this week who are experiencing homelessness. We don't need to look very far. But what I connected with around that this week is that no matter if I don't need to deprive myself of joy. And can I get into a joyful place, a peaceful place, a loving place in that connection within me so that I can radiate that energy into the world? You know, we teach that it's all consciousness. Life is consciousness. And also, I think that when we can connect with joy, with peace and love within us, our divine nature attributes, in that place of connection, we can feel the inspiration of that life radiating through us in a more meaningful way. And that life that is radiating through us as joy can then inspire us from that place of connection to what it is ours to do. So we're serving from a place of joy. We're serving from a place of peace and love. I'm not serving from a place of dejection and worry and fear. Because when I do that, I'm really only adding to the fear and the consciousness of the world. So, again, it's about don't deprive yourself of joy, David, because someone else is not experiencing joy. And again, please hear me say that I am certainly not suggesting that we don't respond, but we are more powerful and empowered when we respond from a very connected place within us in our own consciousness. And then the other thing that came to me about what do I fear? Why do I fear joy? Why do I fear instead of experiencing joy? And what came to me about that, and what really sort of, I felt some sadness around it, honestly, when I got connected with it, was that because joy, I got connected with joy, makes me vulnerable. Feeling joy is a vulnerable place. Because what I recognized for me about that, somewhere along the way, I learned that if you have too much fun, if you really experience joy, that it's going to end badly. Somewhere along the way, I learned that. I don't know, well, I kind of do know where, and you don't need to hear that story, but somewhere along the way, I learned that. And I was sad when I thought about that. The other part was that maybe I don't really deserve joy. How many of us can relate to that? Maybe I don't deserve to feel joy. And the other part of that was that, yeah, it's sort of like I will look like a fool if I experience joy. I will be judged. Again, it makes me vulnerable. I mean, you know how kids are when they're joyous? You know, they will just dance around and they will have a great time and they'll sing their guts out, and whether it sounds good or not, and they play, and they're just many times, and I know this is not true for all children, but that's that joy of childhood that I want to recapture in my life and an experience. And so if you see me dancing around sometimes, just laugh and say, oh, he's just in his joy. Or if you hear me singing at the top of my lungs, just don't listen to me. I'm reminded of that. I don't remember now where it came from, but the idea of dance like nobody's watching, sing like nobody's listening. And the other part of that, too, is love like you've never been hurt, So express that joy, live the joy, allow the joy. And I think as I wrap this up, what I want to say about that is, I do think gratitude is related to joy. I do think when we can cultivate and connect with that joy, our divine nature attributes, when we are willing to be in that place of gratefulness, experiencing God, experiencing life, moving in the moment through us and through all creation, a connection with that. And to experience that, and it really connects us with that. And for me this week, what helped me to connect a little bit, more with my joy is to remember, to take time to think about when I was a kid and running around in the barn at my grandmother's farm, and Christmas, the joy of Christmas, and the presents and Santa Claus, and getting out of school for 2 weeks. That was one of the best parts about Christmas for me. But just the joy of childhood. And again, I understand not everybody had that. And so how do we reclaim joy? How do we connect with joy? And so this week as we go through that, I want to just say, again, listen to the voice of God, the voice of the angels, those higher thoughts within us. Take time to stop and be quiet and ask. You may even want to imagine, visualize an angel appearing before you. You may want to visualize a being of light, or simply an orb of light appearing before you. You can have a conversation with that. You can listen to that in your own mind, in your own heart. Or maybe you just want to go within and just be quiet and listen. But to hear the angel, the voice of God saying, "Fear not, for I'm bringing you information that will connect you with great joy. the joy for all the world. For unto you, and to you, and to you is born today, this moment, and every moment of every day, a Savior who is Christ the Lord. That inner light, the inner connection, the Christ of your own being, born in your awareness, in the manger of your own heart. And as you awaken to that, you're saved from your own limited thinking, from your own belief in separation. A Savior is Christ the Lord. And the angel even says where you can find it, right? In the manger, wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. Right here. The manger in your own heart. The manger in your own being. That sacred place where that Christ light abides and is born in your consciousness in every moment that you're willing to awaken to it. Fear not, for I bring you good tidings of great joy.